But AT&T time, there we go. All right, it is 6 o'clock, so we are calling to order the Board of Zoning Adjustment meeting for today, February 26th. This is the public hearing. So we'll have a roll call, please.
Kevin?
Oh, is that me? Who does that? When? Okay,
I've got
go right ahead, Michael.
Okay, Kevin?
Here.
Rocky?
Here.
Michael here. And Daryl?
Here. And for the record, Larry Roberts is absent this evening. Okay, would move for an approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda. Second.
Now roll call.
Kevin?
Yes.
Rocky?
Yes.
Michael? Yes. Daryl?
I don't vote
He does.
Ah,
in a quorum. Thank you. Okay, so we will now move to the items. Item 3A, the La Bodega Wholesale Foods Conditional Use Permit.
There we go. Yes, thank you. This is the La Bodega Wholesale Foods Conditional Use Permit. There will be additional parts of this project that will be heard during the regular planning board meeting, but we do have to have the public hearing on the conditional use portion of this project. Too many papers. So this site is located, here's Highway 412. This is Via de Tante, and this is Jean Mary. Jean Mary has a dual cul-de-sac on either end. It's a dead-end street. This is a closer up picture. You can see the site is kind of on the corner of Jean Mary and Via de Tante. And this is the existing La Bodega building, and they wish to add on to this site and are proposing a new building. The site is zone C2, as is everything within the all the way down to the 412, 112 intersection. Everything is C2, and what they're asking for is a light warehousing use, which is allowable by a conditional use permit in C2 use zones. This is the site again. There's some floodplain. Here is Jean Mary, and then along that turns right there is Via de Tante. This is the existing building. The floodplain, see there's a little bit of encroachment, and this would be the entrance and exit. The facade they're proposing is not in compliance with the architectural standards for large-scale developments, but if this moves forward to the next step, then you will hear all of the waivers that they're requesting for that. But they are proposing a very neutral toned building with a wainscot brick face and then paneling, so not just metal panel, but with a wainscot. This is an example of what the street looks like currently. So this is Jean Mary looking towards the west, and then this is Jean Mary looking towards the east, and there's the current La Bodega building, just to kind of give you an idea of what is in the area.
So what we're looking at here is an addition, or
It is actually a new building, but will be the same type of. It's an addition to their existing
Use.
use,
Mhm.
but it is a new building. I'm sorry. So they again are asking for this conditional use permit. So this is the public hearing on allowing a light warehouse use within a C2 zoning.
So all the notifications were made, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So then, just to keep things simple, we have an item 4 comments from citizens, but we like to know, we would ask now if there's anyone that is here to speak regarding 3A, in addition to what Ms. Courtney has already presented. So we don't necessarily need to hear from the requester, but if there is any other person here that would like to speak to that, that's the purpose. Seeing none, we will move on.
Okay.
Item 3B.
Yes. So item 3B is an update to chapter 150.005, chapter 153.080, and chapter 153.172, which is actually an addition. This is all related to accessory dwellings. If you'll recall, there was some discussion, and I believe that the city council requested that we remove all accessory dwelling uses a couple of years ago. As we've gone through the practicality of that, staff has ran into many issues and found that there's been a lot of complications enforcing this because people are very upset that they can't have guest homes and they can't have pool houses or full mother-in-law's quarters or something like that. So what we have done is taken a look at other codes in the area and other codes around the country and tried to think of a sensible way to allow accessory dwelling units without it becoming a problem of tiny houses or spreading some sort of, rental type properties that I think was the intent of the original removal of it.
Mhm.
So this first, I've just highlighted where there are changes in the code. You do have the full draft in your packet, and I've sent it to you, I don't know, last week sometime. So what we would be proposing is that to strike accessory dwelling units are not allowed and replaced with accessory dwelling units or ADUs are allowed in certain zoning districts subject to additional requirements. And this is the new code that we've added, 153.172. In no case shall the ADU consist of less than 650 heated square feet of floor area and can be no more than 67% of the size of the primary residence. If you'll notice above, no primary residence can consist of less than 1,000 heated square feet. So 67% of that size is 670 square feet. So essentially they could have an ADU. If you had 1,000 square foot house, you could have an ADU that was 650 feet up to 670 square feet. That's it.
Mhm.
Additionally, I'd like to point out that there are some standards that go with all houses. So all dwellings must be constructed on a permanent foundation. So we're not talking about something you haul in and can be mobile. This is a permanent foundation. That would apply to the to the accessory dwelling unit as well. And all plumbing fixtures shall be connected to sanitary sewer or private sewage disposal. So that means that they would have to either have health department approval to tap into an existing septic, or they're going to have to connect to the city sewer.
Mhm.
And what staff has proposed is that these to be allowed by right in agricultural zoning, residential estate zoning, which is a minimum of 2 acres, R1 zoning, which is a minimum of 1 acre, R2 zoning, which is a minimum of a half acre. Then by conditional use permit, allowed in R3 and R3L, and not permitted in residential multifamily or residential mobile home. The reason the conditional use permit was allowed for R3 is because several areas in the city are zoned R3 but are still very large lots. And if those people have no intent of changing them into a subdivision type lot, they should be allowed to come through and be considered to allow this to happen. As a side, this is something that staff has run into over and over. People want to put a storage shed in their backyard in a residential subdivision, and I have to permit them right now, and they have to comply with setbacks. So they wind up with a shed in the middle of their backyard. We would like to exempt those if they're a small portable shed structure so that they're allowed by right in a neighborhood so that I don't have to keep telling people they have to put them 25 feet in the middle of their yard. So that's for consideration as well.
So just a clarifying question,
Yes.
no zero lot, they can be adjacent?
They can, as long as the structure is maintained in good condition and they take care of it. People put them there anyway.
Right.
So it's a really impossible thing to regulate. So I'd rather just exempt them, and we just didn't have anything in the code to do so.
And then deal with the problems if they come
If
up.
they arise, yes. So this is the new code section. Again, this is research that staff did with local codes and surrounding codes. The American Planning Association has a really good tool on their website where you can go and look up codes of different municipalities and kind of get some comparisons. So for detached accessory dwelling units, they must conform to the following. Basically, they have to have parking. They cannot be less than 650 square feet and no more than 67% of the size of the primary residence. They must comply with setbacks. and separation for fire code. They cannot be taller than the primary structure. A single-family dwelling must already exist on the lot or be constructed in conjunction with. That means that you cannot just go and put a 650 square foot house. It has to meet, if it's your primary residence, you have to meet the primary residence square footage, not the accessory residence square footage. The number, you can only have one accessory dwelling unit per parcel. There was one other thing, and I don't. It's on the okay. It's on the next page. Also, I've been talking to our city attorney, and he thinks that this is okay, and he's going to review it before we fully take it to city council. But it would be a deed restriction. It essentially is an agreement that you've put on your property that states the rules of these accessory dwelling units, that they may not be sold separately unless the property is properly split and conforms to zoning. That means if you have a primary structure that doesn't conform, you can't split it. So if you had 1,000 square foot and a 650 square foot home, you could not split that. You can't sell that separately. But if you had at least 1,000 square feet minimum, then you could in the future. The use is solely in effect only so long as the main residence or the accessory unit is occupied by the landowner. Okay, there are exemptions for that for obvious reasons, such as nursing homes, or you have active military people. The city is not interested in going in there, but we just want to make sure there's a primary owner living on the property in order to keep the quality of these units where we want them. And the density. In single-family zones, ADUs would not be included in that minimum or maximum density calculation, meaning if you have a half-acre lot and you want to place one of these accessory dwelling units, you can still do that. We're not going to say then that you have 2 units and that you would have to get a rezone. You could still do that within that half-acre lot. So these don't count towards density. And then the architectural features of the ADU shall conform with the single-family character of the neighborhood and be constructed with similar material as the primary residence. Somebody asked if they could drag in a shed and put it on a foundation. I said, well, if you can find a shed that matches your house. I mean, sure. If you have a private covenant prohibiting ADUs, or your POA does, you cannot put them in. And that's all that staff has on ADUs.
Okay, any comments from citizens regarding 3B? Go ahead, tell us your name. Typically, we ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes if possible.
My name is Lisa Parks, and I will not go near 3 minutes.
Okay.
You guys,
Oh, and your address.
my address is 827 Callahan Loop.
Okay, thank
I
you.
live out off of 112
Mhm.
if you go going towards Fayetteville. I'm zoned, I believe, a R1. I've lived in Tawnytown in our home since I think we bought it in 2004. And I'm just really in support of this ordinance. I have an aging mother. I talked to you guys last month, or maybe the month before. We're very interested in having a small place in the back for her, just because she's still very healthy, can get around very well. But I really appreciate you all considering this ordinance.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Jason Apple, 284 Oak Hills Drive. Just one question about, does this just pertain to the new dwelling units? Or would it be kind of retroactive to, if you have one currently today on your residence, would you come in for a permit, or how would you control those current?
If you already have one existing on your property,
I'm just asking.
right. If anyone already has one existing on their property, most likely it was grandfathered in before this change was made a year and a half ago. And we're not going to go back and back permit somebody's, we're not going to make them come into compliance. This would be moving forward if somebody comes in and wants to construct a new one.
Any other comments, questions? Seeing no additional, we'll move forward to item 3C, updates to tow yards.
Yes, thank you. This is updates to chapter 153.021 and chapter 153.083. This one fits all on one page, so a lot better. The only changes would be to add wrecker yard and increase the days. So a true salvage and junk and wrecker yard are where you take the cars apart. They're crushed, they're stripped for parts. They sit out there for a very long time. So what we're doing is just trying to make it more clear on what is a true wrecker junkyard and what's a tow yard. We've had a business approach us who said, well, it's not fair that you're putting us in the same category as this wrecker kind of salvage yard, because that's not what we are. What they do is they haul cars that have been wrecked in accidents off 412. They tow trucks that are parked in the wrong spot that have a no parking sign. They are on police rotation when they get a DWI and have to go pick up a car. So the addition of the definition for towing or vehicle impound lot, premises used primarily for the storage of operable automobiles or wrecked vehicles until they're placed back in the control of the owner and or insurance company. So long as no operable automobile, inoperable junk, or wrecked automobile remains on site for more than 90 days. State code requires 45 days. 90 days was a discussion so that people would have long enough time to take those cars to auction. They asked for 6 months. We negotiated and came down to 3 months, but you were welcome when we move on to the planning board portion to discuss the length of that time. And this shows that they would be not allowed in C1 zones, which is very light commercial, allowed with a conditional use permit in C2. That way, if we have an area that is pretty far out and still zone commercial, they would be maybe not as restrictive, but inside the city, we can ask for more fencing, more screening, more compatibility, and then they would just be permitted by right in industrial zones.
Any comments regarding item 3C from anyone? Seeing none, are there any comments from citizens regarding any item unrelated to the agenda? We're always willing to hear. Seeing none, I move that this meeting is adjourned, and we now move to our regular session Planning Board of Zoning Adjustments agenda for Tuesday, February 26th. Protocol requires roll call, yes?
Yes.
So attendance roll call, please, Michael.
Kevin.
Here.
Rocky.
Here.
Larry. Michael, I'm here. Daryl.
Here. Thank you very much. Would move for an approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Kevin.
Yes.
Rocky.
Yes.
Yes. And Daryl.
I'm again not voting
Oh,
due to
sorry.
quorum. That's fine. Item 4, the approval of the minutes from January 22 and 29. We had public hearing minutes on the 22nd. We had planning board minutes from our regular meeting, and then the special planning board meeting that occurred on the 29th. Would entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second?
Thank you. Roll call.
Kevin.
Yes.
Rocky.
Yes.
Michael. Yes.
Okay, item 5, comments from citizens. Again, the public hearing has occurred, and most everything was probably stated at that time regarding agenda items. If there is anything that you are present for to speak about and would like to address the planning board now that's not related to the agenda, you can do that. Or you can wait and we give an opportunity for comments during the agenda item if anything additional needs to be stated or commented upon from the public. So anyone would like to address the board for any unrelated item to the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move forward. No old business. So item 7A, the La Bodega Wholesale Foods Conditional Use Permit, Large Scale Development and Waiver.
Yes, thank you. I will give a little more detail on this, since we're in the voting portion now.
Will we have one vote for all three, or will we have votes for individual?
We will have 5 votes on this one.
Thank you very much.
So the conditional use permit, this again is just like we heard at the public hearing, they would like to allow a light warehouse use within a C2 zone. The purpose of taking a harder look in conditional use is to make sure that there are no compatibility issues. So the proposed building is in an area that we saw that has similar uses and buildings. There are no adjacent residential uses, and there's no anticipated negative impact on the surrounding businesses. There is that small encroachment to the floodplain, but again, the majority of the floodplain is not encroached upon. We look at things in the conditional use permit to make sure that they don't need additional buffering with landscaping or anything like that. At this time, the applicant is not proposing any additional buffering beyond what is required in our large scale development code. Again, staff evaluated it and the site doesn't really call for it. If the planning board does want to increase the landscaping, you do have that right to do if you feel like it is necessary for compatibility issues.
Would you go back one slide, please? So the purple is just the area in which they will construct.
That's their
That-
property
Correct. What is the actual size of, I'm just curious.
of the property.
No, of the building?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's 10,000. That's in the large scale part.
It's in the non-blue area.
No, it's 10,640 square feet.
What, Rocky?
I believe it fits in
It fit-
outside of the blue area.
Yes, it fits mostly outside of the blue area. If you can see the line here where I've got the floodplain drawn, you can see that the building is not within the floodplain.
Yes, I
What
see it
is-
now.
What's being encroached in the floodplain is grading, drainage, detention. So there will be some disturbance. There will be a little bit of fill in the parking, but it's not the building.
Got it. Okay.
All technical information will be gone over in the large scale development portion if you determine that the conditional use permit can be allowed. All neighboring properties within 200 feet were notified by certified mail appropriately. Staff has received 1 in favor comment and no opposed comments. And as this project is located in an area where this type of development is prevalent and it is allowed by the conditional use process, staff recommends approval of the La Bodega Wholesale Foods conditional use permit request to allow light warehouse within C2 zoning. There are just the conditions that it must proceed through the large scale development portion.
Okay, so on the screen now are the conditions that,
That staff is recommending.
got it. Okay, so this then is item 7A1,
Yes.
conditional use permit. I would entertain a motion.
A motion to approve the conditional use for La Bodega Wholesale Foods with conditions attached.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Kevin,
Yes.
Rocky,
Yes.
Michael, yes.
Thank you. That passes. So now item 7A2.
Thank you. Yes, so since the CUP request was approved, we can move forward to the large scale. The preliminary large scale request is to construct the 10,640 square foot building adjacent to the existing La Bodega Wholesale Foods warehouse site. They are requesting waivers from sidewalks, parking location, and architectural standards for the large scale developments. And they have provided all of their stormwater information. We have reviewed all of their utilities. They will be extending water line across the street, and they have a fire hydrant shown. The fire marshal has reviewed that and is satisfied with the location. All internal roads must be compacted to meet fire ratings so that they can get in and out of the site. The fire marshal has reviewed the architectural plans and submitted comments to the architect. Most of those are life safety related, and those will be reviewed further at the pre-construction meeting when they get a full set of life safety plans. Again, we're talking about this detention pond that is in the floodplain. Our engineer has looked at that, and he is still currently reviewing the latest submittal. So if there are additional engineering comments, they would be responsible for addressing those. The floodplain permit has been submitted. Staff has not gotten it processed yet, but will. So when we talk about the road access, they have access onto Jean Mary, and as I was showing you earlier, this is a dead end road on both ends. It's a local road. It's very low impact. This is all this sort of light warehousing use in this area.
And
This-
there are no sidewalks anywhere back.
There are no sidewalks anywhere back there and nowhere for them to go
Mhm.
to. So when we talk about this, large scale codes, or the sidewalks, I'm sorry, on the sidewalks, they will be asking for a waiver because there are no sidewalks and no pedestrian circulation will be happening in this area. Additionally, the driveways are a bit unorthodox, but because of the floodplain, there are a couple things going on. They've pushed the building as far to the side as they can to keep it out of the floodway and floodplain. And therefore, they've had to kind of do this to get their trucks in and out. Normally, we would have a longer entrance where they could turn around within the parking area, but the site is so constricting that they really can't do that. That doesn't require a waiver. That's a call that that the city can allow, but it's this is the reason that this kind of driveway configuration is allowing to be happened. So large scale code also says that parking no more than 60% of the off-street parking shall be located between the front facade and the principal building. So they are showing all of their parking that's required for this building in front of the building. They're only supposed to have 60% of it. Again, that's due to the odd placement of the floodplain and the building, and they're really trying to respect the site. So they're asking for a waiver to allow the parking to be slightly altered. And we again talked about the architectural design plans. They don't meet the 75% masonry requirement. They don't meet the roofline articulation requirement, and they don't have as many architectural features as our code requires. They are asking for waivers from these, which I will go over individually. While there are a few details on the large scale to be worked out, nothing should significantly impact the overall design. So staff is recommending for approval of the La Bodega Wholesale Foods preliminary large scale development with conditions. And those are listed.
And we'll address the waivers independently.
Yes.
Okay. So at this point then, I would entertain a motion regarding 7A2 preliminary large-scale development for La Bodega.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Kevin,
Yes.
Rocky,
Yes.
Michael, yes.
Thank you. So item 7A3, waivers for La Bodega.
Yes, and there are three, so we do have to vote on each one. The first one, or I want to talk about waivers for just a minute. So what the waiver code says is when by strict interpretation of these regulations, an applicant incurs undue restrictions on the physical property to be subdivided, a waiver for such requirements may be granted by the Planning Commission. Under no circumstance should a waiver be granted because of personal hardship or for personal emotional reasons, and waivers shall not be granted based strictly on financial hardship. So what the kind of axioms that we look at are no waiver shall be granted unless the Planning Commission finds finds the following: that there are special circumstances or conditions affecting the land involved, that the waiver is necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of a substantial property right of the applicant, so can they use their property, and that the granting of the waiver will not be detrimental to public health, safety, or welfare, or that granting the waiver will not have an effect on prevailing the orderly subdivision in the future for adjacent properties. So with that said, let's talk about the parking waiver. Is allowed to allow no more than 60% of the off-street parking in front of the building. Staff really finds that there are special circumstances affecting this land, that being the floodplain. Almost half of the floodplain of the property is within the floodplain, and the applicant has really done a good job of staying out of the flood area, which is a sensitive environmental issue. So they have tried to address the site, and by doing that, it's pushed their design to the front of the building. Additionally, granting this waiver will not be detrimental to public health, safety, or welfare as it is the parking of the internal business. So staff does recommend approval of the waiver to allow all of the parking to be placed on the street side of this property.
Only access to the building will be on the north. Is that correct?
What is that strange overhead door? Can you please go to the mic and state your name?
Yes, thank you.
My name is Rafael. I'm the owner of the La Bodega Wholesale. That door is in purpose to, if we decided to use our building together, we can have some way to go from the existing building to the another one, to the new one.
Do you have a door on that side of the existing building?
Yes.
So you could open both and just
Hold
walk.
and just go
So,
through instead of going to the front.
so not vehicular traffic.
No.
Gotcha. There's my question on that was that there's this overhead door here, which was odd because there was no way to access it via any
What's
drive.
the distance between the two buildings?
It's
They're
20, 30 feet,
no
maybe. Yeah, 35, 40 feet.
feet. Yes.
And what is the surface between the two buildings?
There's a little bit of gravel, but I think it's grass right now.
Now it's grass. Yes.
Okay.
But we're going to, if we get your permission, we're going to put it a concrete ramp.
Side, just a walk
to get it-
between
to get together.
something?
So yes, the access will be in the front.
Is that going to be the length of the building or just where you?
Between the two
Between the
buildings.
two buildings. Okay.
Like,
Just right there.
Mhm.
okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
So yes, all vehicular access will be on the front, and that is how most people will enter as well. But there may be some employees walking back and forth between.
Okay. Anything else, Courtney? So
Not,
the first waiver, the one that we're about to
yes.
promotion, is related to parking 60% waiver. So I would entertain a motion regarding waiver number 1, parking.
I make a motion to waive the requirement for 60% of parking in the front.
Thank you, Michael.
Second.
Thank you, Rocky. Vote, roll call.
Kevin,
Yes.
Rocky,
Yes.
Michael, yes.
Waiver number 2.
Yes, so this is on the sidewalks. The applicant is requesting a waiver from the sidewalk requirement due to the area being primarily warehouses with no existing pedestrian system. Staff finds that the waiver is necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of the substantial right of the property owner. Requiring a sidewalk in this location will not serve the public as there are no adjacent sidewalks and most of the area is built out. I mean, if in the future we do a major redesign, that might be an appropriate time to ask for it, but right now it truly serves no purpose to the public or to the applicant. Additionally, granting this waiver will not be detrimental to public health, safety, and welfare or injurious to other properties in the area and will not have an effect on preventing orderly subdivision of other land in the area, as again, most of the property within this is already built. So
Then-
staff is recommending for approval of the waiver to remove the requirement of a sidewalk for this.
Would entertain a motion 7A 3.
Motion to approve waiver of sidewalk.
Second.
Thank you, thank you. Roll call.
Kevin,
Yes.
Rocky,
Yes.
Michael, yes.
Waiver 3.
This one is for the architectural requirements. They are requesting a waiver from the required architectural elements. The surrounding buildings are primarily that blue panel that you saw. The proposed building will have a neutral color tone and have a split-face block wainscot on the street facade. The applicant states that the added material and natural color combination will enhance the area while still being in keeping with the surrounding architecture. So they're trying to both enhance the building and make it not stick out completely. Staff does find that there are special circumstances affecting the land because of because while this area is zoned commercial, most of the buildings in this area are light warehousing uses. It would be out of place and serve no purpose to strictly enforce the masonry requirements on this building. Granting this waiver would not be detrimental to public health, safety, or welfare, and nor would it prevent the orderly development, as again, most buildings are existing in the area. However, staff does feel the building should incorporate the remainder of the architectural features and would recommend that the board include these if the waiver for the masonry is granted. This serves to enhance the area, provide precedent for future businesses that are similar while remaining reasonable for this type of development. And the large scale standards in the code are intended to improve the overall quality of commercial development with surrounding land uses and enhance pedestrian safety and walkability, which we discussed already. Staff does feel that by requiring just a little bit more of the architectural requirements, that it starts to set more of a tone in the area to bring other buildings as they're replaced up to a little bit higher standard without making them do 75% masonry, which is
So how much more are we requiring?
what I'm asking you to do is to allow the waiver for the masonry, but add the restriction or add additional the roof line. So this building is over 100 feet long and the roof line is flat. So just give me a little parapet, something to break up that monotonous. And then also adding 2 more architectural features of like a canopy or something that gives it some sort of shape other than just the warehouse structure. So it would be altering the roof line and adding 2 more small architectural features to what is already designed to bring it into compliance with the rest. Again, staff does recommend waiving the 75% masonry requirement. And this is just staff's belief that this enhances the area, sets a precedent for future development so that we get a little bit better quality as we
Employee
move forward.
entrance is where?
I believe that this is an employee-only entrance on this end, and this is the main entrance here.
Got it. Okay.
Or you can waive them all. It's whatever the board is. This is just staff's recommendation. So that's what they're asking for, is to waive all of these architectural.
And it would appear as we see it on the,
Yes, if you waive what they're requesting right now, it would appear as you're seeing on the picture.
How many more lots are available in this area for development?
Looks like that's the last.
Yeah, it's not many.
So we don't have to worry about setting a precedent.
No, what I would say,
One more, it looks like.
right, this is almost entirely in floodplain. It may be hard to develop. However, the reason that staff would be asking for this is as buildings are replaced over time, perhaps we've set up a slightly higher standard for what that looks like in C2 zoning. I'm not going to speak to the appropriateness of this being zoned C2 in the first place, but if that's what it is zoned and that is what the city wants, then I feel like we should, within reason, ask for some higher standards on these types of buildings.
so go back to the staff recommendation page, please, and state that one more time. Just for clarification.
Yes. Staff is recommending a waiver to allow less than 75% masonry facade, but add a change in the roof line height and add 2 additional architectural features of some sort.
So roof line would affect the view from the front,
Yes.
and the choices for you're not requiring specific, they can choose from from the list.
They could inset the door. They already have a canopy over it. I mean, there's some very simple architectural things that really do make buildings lose that long sort of unbroken facade of these kind of warehousing type buildings without doing much that would impact the cost or the overall, but just a little bit of extra to to come into compliance with our code and to just set up that, like I said, that precedent for when we do start to see replacement buildings in this area, that they're maybe constructed to a slightly higher standard.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Clarification? If not, I would entertain a motion regarding the waiver regarding architectural facade for La Bodega.
I move to approve the waiver with, of the facade requirements with staff recommendations of 0.7, 8, and 9 as listed in the handout.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Michael. Roll call.
Kevin,
Yes.
Rocky,
Yes.
Michael, yes.
Thank you. Does this complete the business?
That is
For La
all
Bodega?
of La Bodega. Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much and nice to meet you, sir. Yes, absolutely. Okay. And I didn't say this earlier, but you are not obligated to remain. Once we finish with your business, you are welcome to join your family. So thank you. Okay, so now moving on to 7B, high-tech chiropractic preliminary large-scale development.
Yes, thank you. The applicant is requesting to construct 916.55 square feet as an addition onto an existing 866.8 square foot building. This is a very small, large-scale development, but unfortunately, because they met the 50% or greater rule for the addition, they had to come through the process. So what we're asking for is pretty small. This is Highway 112, 412 intersection. Here's the site. It's actually on the back of another site. This is closer up. The only portion of the site that we're considering is the portion in the back, which is the portion that the high-tech chiropractic leases. This is, again, the existing site. You can see there's a little bit of parking in the existing very small building on this site.
Is that a permanent building?
Yes, it is. They have a small amount of floodplain on the site as well. And you can see it there.
Just a second. I need to ask Rocky, go back to, are you referring to the building in the back?
I am, yes,
Yeah.
this little guy right here.
Both of us are.
What is that?
It's high-tech chiropractic. They want to more than double the size of their building.
Oh, so it's not in
It is not in this
that
shopping.
horseshoe.
It is back here.
Huh.
See it?
I
There
think
you
it backs up right out behind La Bodega.
go. It does. You can see La Bodega right here.
Okay, thank you.
Same area.
Continue.
They're proposing to connect to water. There's an existing 8-inch water line. They are, Ozarks Electric had a comment about the utility easement, which they're now showing. And I was a little confused because there's an abandoned septic system in the area, but sewer, I wasn't sure if this was already connected to sewer or if they were proposing to now switch over to sewer. They're already connected. Okay, so that is abandoned and they won't have any more requirements on that, on the septic system. The Tawnytown Police had no comments. The fire marshal went out on site and spoke to the owner to talk about how the access drives will work and to talk about the fire hydrant location and some of the exit signs or emergency lights within the building. The fire marshal is not concerned and said that he would meet on site to talk to them about striping or signage when it gets to that point. Architectural plans were submitted. This does not technically have road frontage, so they do not have to meet the large scale development architectural requirements. The fire marshal had a few comments on life safety, but he said he could just go meet with the guy on site and is not concerned at all. There's not a detention pond proposed for this site, but the city engineer had no concerns about the small addition that they're adding. I will say a portion of the dumpster is within the AE zone, and floodplain code states that you can't have trash receptacles where they could be potentially impacted by floodwaters or moved away. The engineer has verified that that is above the base flood elevation, so they do not need to do any additional requirements for that dumpster. It is shown to be screened. They have access onto Highway 412. They are not proposing any additional accesses at this time.
Can you go back to the satellite view? And, okay, I see it. Okay, now
Okay.
continue.
They're not proposing any additional signage at this time either. So this is a proposal of what the building would look like. They're matching the facade that's already there. Again, they do not have to meet the architectural requirements because they do not have road frontage.
So primary or main entrance is on the left front.
Yes, here, and there is an exit on the back as well, but that's for fire safety.
So the part that I'm looking at or facing me is actually facing north.
No, this is the south facade. So south, like if you were, it's facing south. If you were
Thank you.
turning off of Highway 412, this is what you're going to see back there.
Got it.
I do have a
Oh, I see.
Google Earth image there for you. So you can see it is just tucked in right behind that other one, and they plan to extend out this way. What you can see from Highway 412 should not be significantly impacted.
Where's their current signage?
It's right here, and they sometimes have a truck that's parked out there. Big truck.
And so the sign for the other building, there's not a space in there?
No.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
Just didn't remember that.
So staff does recommend approval of high-tech chiropractic preliminary large-scale development with some minor conditions. I will say we can strike 6 and 7 as those are not needed because that has already been connected to sewer. And again, basic conditions listed on the screen.
Okay. I would entertain a motion for 7B high-tech chiropractic.
A motion to approve the recommendations of the high-tech chiropractic preliminary large-scale development
With conditions. Claire?
with conditions.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Kevin?
Yes.
Rocky?
Yes.
Michael? Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Item 7C, Highway 112 Apartments, preliminary large-scale development.
So the Highway 112 Apartments is requesting preliminary large-scale development for 11 24-unit apartment buildings to be constructed in 2 phases on 21.5 acres. That's a total of 264 units. They are currently zoned for residential multifamily that allows 16 units per acre. Right now, what they're proposing is about 12.5 units per acre, so they're under what they can put on the site. They are proposing to extend water as there's not adequate water at this time. The line is too small. So they're actually proposing to extend an 8-inch water main down Highway 112. They're also proposing to construct a lift station to connect to sewer. So they're extending our sewer system as well in order to do this. The applicant is providing a lot of infrastructure on this development. The Public Works Director provided comments, and they did want some more information, which came in this afternoon very late on that lift station. So that will be fully reviewed by Garver. They're our water sewer engineer as well as our civil. So they will be looking at that and get comments back during the construction phase. We did notify Springdale School District as this is a large influx of residents, but we got no comment back from them. So we don't typically, but we always send very large residential developments to them for comment. There are several fire hydrants shown on the plans. I'm sorry, get to the plans. Several fire hydrants shown on the plans, and the fire marshal has reviewed those. These buildings are all proposed to be sprinklered. The fire marshal had some revisions to where those fire department connections were located, but he is happy with what the applicant has responded with. The main drive aisles are 26 feet wide into the site. This one is 40 feet wide, as is required for the northern entrance.
Because of proximity to why?
To allow to turn off.
Okay.
The quicker turn off of Highway 112.
Yep.
Okay. They've got that should allow for plenty of time to get off the road. All turns have the required radiuses for the fire apparatus, and the fire marshal will coordinate fire lane striping and no parking signs when we get to that point. They have submitted architectural plans. So what they've done is submitted some concepts to us. These are 3-story buildings. There are 2 different buildings that they proposed that will be alternated, I'm assuming. The fire marshal just said he needs to look at the full life safety plans when they get to that point. There is a large drainage pond and several drainage ditches along the exterior that are being proposed. This pond that exists here currently will be left, if I can find that. So this pond will be remaining, but this one is proposed to be filled in at this time. Staff did find that there were some potential wetland areas. And so if there may be mitigation that needs to happen with that. They've hired FTN to look into that wetlands to see if there is any jurisdictional requirement for mitigation. So I'll let you know if that impacts anything.
Can you go to a slide where I can get my bearings of where you're at?
Okay, here's Highway 412 and here's Highway 112.
Okay.
Okay,
That's
we're just
what I
south.
thought.
This is that Venezia Piazza construction.
Yes.
Yes, and this is right across the street. And there's a small subdivision with that Lillian Jean
Mhm.
road there. That this south entrance comes across from that. Okay. The project does have access, obviously, on Highway 112, and any permits will need to go through the Arkansas Highway Department for those drives. The site visibility did appear adequate on both of those, looking at Google Earth. So this is from the south entrance looking north. This is the south entrance looking south. So you can clearly see well enough to turn in and out. The applicant is requesting a waiver, which I can go over as well, on some of the sidewalks. Right now, they are not proposing to construct sidewalks along Highway 112 or connecting, it looks like, from the internal sidewalk system up to 112. I'd like to go over that in a separate waiver hearing. The architectural design elements were sufficient to meet our large-scale development, and there are a couple of questions left. Timeline information for phase 2 hasn't been submitted. The entrance sign is not shown. If they decide they want an entrance sign in the future, they'll have to come through. What I believe the applicant is doing is kind of waiting, as we don't know what is going to happen with 112, to propose anything along 112 so that they don't have to redo it all.
What is the size range of each unit?
I do not know. We can ask the developer if she has more information. Or Jason, if he wants to.
The unit size, each individual unit size will be between 720 square feet or 1,000 square feet per unit.
1 and 2 bedroom?
Yes.
Okay.
This slide shows the apartments numbered, and then I'd like to point out that apartments 10, 11, and 12 are not to be proposed with phase 1. Those will be constructed later. However, all of the infrastructure, the roads, the water lines, that's all to be put in phase 1. They're
And
also
instead of buildings, grassy areas?
for the time being, yes. And I had asked if they had a timeline on phase 2 and was not provided that yet. So if I get more information, I can let you know. They are also proposing, again, that lift station that we talked about to bring sewer. They're proposing a dog park, a playground, and a pool facility for the residents. Excuse me. Again, there are several technical things to work through for construction, but at this point, there's nothing that should significantly impact the overall design of the layout as they've got it proposed. And staff is recommending approval of, the official name is T-Town 112 Apartments, preliminary large-scale development with conditions. And there are several, but mostly things that can be worked out through construction and through additional plans that need to be submitted.
T-Town. I like it.
T-Town, 112 apartments.
Did you list your conditions somewhere?
Yes, they're both in the report and on the screen. Go back through
There were
those.
19 of them.
Yes.
Okay.
So,
Yes.
coordinate with utilities. The SWIP needs to be installed on site prior to construction. Any planning comments left?
You don't have to
Good,
read
okay.
them.
I will not read them. That's great. They are in the report on page, looks like they start on 60, page 66.
So we are now going to entertain a motion for the large-scale development, preliminary large-scale development only, and we will address the waiver separately, correct? So I would entertain a motion.
A motion to approve the T-Town 112 large-scale development with conditions.
Second?
Thank you. Roll call.
Kevin,
Yes.
Rocky,
Yes.
Michael, yes.
Thank you. And now the waiver.
Yes. So the applicant is requesting a waiver from the sidewalk requirements along South Meister Road as RDOT is proposing to improve the street and the street plans are not finalized. Staff agrees. RDOT does have future plans to improve this part of the road, but there are no set plans and there's no set timeline at this point. Staff does have information from regional planning that the intersection at 112 and 412 has funding. And then we've had discussion, but nothing solid, that the next phase would be to go north from 412 north up to 612. Again, there's no funding, there's no timeline. The south portion of South Meister gets a little more sketchy. We haven't, we don't know where it's at in the process.
What's happening at the 112, 412 intersection?
We don't even have plans on that. We just know they granted $10 million to do it, whatever it is that they're going to do. So we don't know. And I completely agree with the applicant that we don't know what's going to happen here. However, staff does have concerns about granting a waiver because it could take several more years. It could take 5 or it could take 25 to get to South Meister. We don't know at this point. And there are several other properties along the same stretch that could also develop. And I feel like setting up a precedent of allowing a waiver, then you just set yourself farther and further back behind. I did have a really good talk with the applicant today about this. And I think that there's a proposal that they would like to counter with, which I haven't seen fully, but I'd like to hear from them if they do have a counter, because at this point, staff is recommending denial of the waiver. Because again, I have concerns about future connectivity, and I do think that if we don't do sidewalks, we do start to impact public health, safety, and welfare. Highway 112, as I discussed with a developer this earlier afternoon, it is dangerous, and there's some concern about putting a sidewalk out there and having people walk on it, but it's even more dangerous to not have a sidewalk. And yes, this road may be. It might get done in 5 years. I just don't know. So right now, staff is recommending denial of the waiver, but I do feel like we should hear from the applicant if they have additional proposals.
So obviously we want sidewalk connectivity. We want our people to walk to the retail establishments, or have that flexibility. Currently there is not sidewalk north, 412. At this time, if there's an option for an agreement with the city, when that connectivity is there, we will agree to put the sidewalk in at that time. Because that's something that we do desire and do want. We just don't want to put the sidewalk in that location or in a location that could potentially be removed in the future. So hopefully we can create this agreement, and when that connectivity is there, we can install sidewalk infrastructure at that point in time.
We do have a precedent for allowing this type of agreement. We allowed this to happen with Path Utilities, where we did set up an agreement that said, with Path Utilities, what the agreement said was that at such time that either adjacent property developed, that then they would construct their sidewalk. So they would keep going.
You remember that?
So that's not out of the question to do something like that. I don't want to set the city up to a point where we're not getting sidewalks constructed in areas. So if that's something that you guys want to entertain to do where,
Do those agreements go through our legal for review?
they do. And our attorney said that it, I mean, it's essentially a land covenant that goes with the land. So even if the land's sold, it's still a covenant. And essentially what it does is it revokes, if you allow a waiver, there's conditions then that says at a certain point, this waiver is therefore revoked and you are responsible for bringing this up to compliance. That's what we did with Path Utilities. So I don't think that's out of the question. I think what they're asking for is not either property, but every property to the north to get up to the intersection. Be built, have sidewalk connection down before they have to construct theirs. So basically they want it to come down from the intersection before they have to join. Is that correct, Jason?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So it's not very many properties. Plaza Tire is already constructing their sidewalk here. Then there will be a few in the middle before it got to their property.
What would be the conditions that we required the people in the middle to construct sidewalk?
I mean, well,
They have no obligation.
we can't do it once they sell. They have no obligation to connect it. And I will say that this, I realize that it's crossing 112, but there is sidewalk on Venezia Piazza, and that does get you up closer. It's a hodgepodge right now, but that's what
Yeah, the only reason that the sidewalk would be built there is if that property sold, buildings were torn down and something else was built.
correct.
So
Unless
even if
the highway department comes in, strips out, because we have now approved that. You guys did this last year. You approved that master transportation plan. And RDOT does try to be as respectful as possible to cities' master transportation plans. So if they came in and they stripped all that down and relined, then they could have the potential to put in those sidewalks for those people as well. There's a lot of things at play.
So let me ask this question. So if they laid concrete for sidewalks and the state department come in and widened the highway and did all that, the state department would be responsible for tearing anything up and replacing anything that they have to do different.
Right. If they did put them in at this point, we would have them put them back to allow right of way. It would only be in the case of a realignment at this time. They're already dedicating enough right of way that the highway department can fit a 5-lane road in there.
But my point is that it wouldn't, if the state department required a change, it wouldn't be something that the landowner would have to pay for.
there would be no additional cost after.
The highway department doesn't have to obey they just try to when they can. The highway department doesn't, how am I putting this? We don't have any jurisdiction over the highway department. They can do whatever they want, essentially, within their right of way. And so we can't make them put something back if they damage it. They just generally do.
But the sidewalk would not be.
It would be
in
out of
their
their.
right of way unless they extended it.
Sidewalks are typically put in the right of way.
I mean, even if we put the sidewalk in at the location per master street plan standards, there's no guarantee it's going to be at the correct elevation. It's 2% off the curb.
Right.
So they're most likely going to tear it out regardless even if it's in the right place. The elevation is what's going to control, and there's no way to know from a design standpoint of 112
Yeah.
what that elevation is going to be.
We have no plans on 112.
So my concern is, as stated as in the last one with PATH, is that if we continue to approve waivers for sidewalks, that staff will not be able to keep up with it, and everybody will be asking for a waiver for sidewalks as a precedent. That's my concern.
In some cases, I feel like it's similar. In this case, it's it's very different. The path
This
utility.
is going to be an area that's developed quickly. So
Yes, I
And-
believe so.
And also, we're not developing our frontage right now,
No.
specifically with the intent, because we don't know what 112 is going to do. And so, I mean, we're not just going to leave it a grass field when 112 develops, or even in the near future, potentially. And so, if we decided to do the development on 112, we could do it at that time. I mean, it's not like I don't feel like it's just a full waiver of sidewalk. I mean, we want the sidewalk there.
where you can
Um,
understand my concern.
Yes, sir.
That how does staff keep up with that?
Well, I do think Jason has a very valid point there. They have not proposed any development along the highway. They most likely will.
So when
So
when's
the-
timeline for phase 2?
Do we have a timeline for
It's
phase
going to
2?
depend on occupancy and how fast it fills up. I mean, it could be right after, maybe a year later, or whatever that status is of being able to occupy the units that we're building right now.
Okay.
Go back to the slide that shows dog yard and all of that. So the intent then is not to just leave it as we see it. The intent is to also develop along 112.
Well, we've left a buffer there. We don't know what's going to go there. It may be commercial, it may be more multifamily. We don't have
But my
any
question,
intent at
So
this
that
point.
property might be leased out to someone else
We might split it off and
as
do something
commercial.
different. Yeah, I mean, we don't have any intent for that area right now. But it's not going to remain green.
Could we say when that area does develop that sidewalk be put in at that time?
Yeah.
That gives
I
them,
mean-
an unknown period of time.
Yes, well, okay, so if they do come back with something there, then we would revisit the sidewalk conversation anyway.
Yeah.
If you want to grant the waiver tonight, what Jason is saying is there's a pretty good chance that they're going to some point develop this anyway. And then at that point, again, we would revisit the sidewalk discussion. What I think we can't take into consideration cost when we talk about waivers, but it is a lot of infrastructure that the applicant doesn't feel connects right now. It's a lot of infrastructure that staff is concerned about not having in the future when we need it. So this is not.
if there were two parcels, we wouldn't be having this conversation. If there was a separate parcel against 112 and this was behind.
That's correct.
So
We would not.
if we granted a waiver with conditions, describe to me how the staff later catches this and make sure that it is done.
It's noted and it's in the database. I mean, the best that you can hope is when I do, we're assuming that I'm going to be here for 20 years, right? When I do projects, I pull up adjacent projects that have been done and I look at what was done on those projects, but I can't say for every staff that that's always going to happen. It is a covenant that is filed and therefore it's a deed on that property. So when if that property is conveyed, then that goes with it and the new owner would be on notice if anybody reads those things. But
But it would be based on memory
memory and staff notes and
to come back and enforce the agreement.
staff research, hopefully.
Right.
And we do document everything. So
And going back, staff recommendation is to
Deny.
deny still.
yes, I do think Daryl had a great point though.
Did y'all hear my point, my question?
It's a solution.
It is a potential solution.
So our options now are to approve, deny, or table.
Yes, approve with staff recommended, or with conditions that the applicant has proposed, which is doing,
In writing there. So.
right, which is, well, but it's doing the similar type of agreement.
Can
So
approve with
with an agreement,
future agreement.
or you
So
can,
that's number one, or we can deny.
or you can just straight up approve the waiver with no agreement, just knowing that if they do ever develop the frontage, that this would be revisited because it's then frontage again. Or deny it or table it.
And then there's the suggestion out there that
Which tabling would allow them
to split the property, which would solve your problem.
If we were going to do that, then I would just recommend granting the waiver versus having to make them go through that process. And the reason is if we're going to say we want to table it from, this waiver to have them split the property, that's just, it's an unnecessary step.
I don't agree with that.
So
So
the waiver
the
would allow.
parcel, if anything was ever built on it, would require the sidewalks.
It-
The
it-
waiver would not.
It would, if they ever come back with any kind of development in that area, it's going to trigger the large scale development. And that we're going to have this conversation again if they're still not proposing sidewalks. What I'm saying is if they do anything on that property up front that's not part of this proposal, it would trigger this same sidewalk requirement. So to have them, to table it, to have them split it, it's really kind of a it would do the same thing as just approving the waiver. Because you're not losing future rights to, if they come in with new development in that front, you're not losing any rights to that. What you're saying is right now with this current proposal, they do not need to put in this sidewalk. If they ever did anything up front, then we would have this, have this sidewalk discussion again.
So then let me restate what our options are. Or the logical things. It would be to deny, that's number one, based on staff recommendations. Approve with conditions that there be some sort of contractual agreement.
Mhm.
If adjoining properties or whatever conditions that,
That triggers.
correct, that trigger that, and it could be adjacent property. It wouldn't have to be necessarily just to the north. It could be adjacent property, the same conditions that have been
Right, but what the applicant is asking for is to the north to make that 412 connection. They're saying that the property to the south, not necessarily as important.
If property to the south were to develop and they would have the same requirement, then those would connect
And they would
toward
be-
the intersection.
Yeah, and they would be requesting a waiver as well because so-and-so didn't have to do it.
That is a definite possibility. But if the property to the south, then we could forward on that agreement. And I would say at some point, if there's enough of them in one area, then staff will definitely know. Like that's not knowledge that's going to get lost, and hopefully it would be developed very quickly.
So the way I see it, it's a vote of approve or deny based on the information we have right now.
Yes.
Are there any other questions?
I think give Jason just a minute to see if he has any additional comments.
If we deny, can they come back at any time? Let's see.
They could come back, they could go to the city council, correct?
Yes, they can appeal it to the city council if they don't like a planning board decision. I don't know if there's a requirement to, if you denied it, if they could come back and ask for the same waiver again, like.
Well,
back
they
to-
could ask for it changed with new conditions or
I guess then really
Negotiate.
a
Right.
denial would mean that they can't continue with their project.
A denial would mean that they have to build the sidewalk.
Okay.
You were about to say something? We're conversing. Okay.
Well, I mean, we just want to make and reiterate the point that we feel like it's not about the money, but it's about not wasting money. And we feel like if we put the sidewalk in, that's what we're doing. Is wasting money in a sense that it's not going to be at the right elevation. It might be there for 5 years. It might be there for 20 years. We don't know.
The point
We
is, you don't know.
We don't know.
Right.
And I mean, they could come in here and do this in 2 years. We just don't know.
Yes.
Kind of what Jason was saying, but so I'm Tamara Martin and I'm with the development group. But so to the point earlier, I think that you were asking about, so if the highway department comes in and like rips it all out, what's the cost to us?
Right.
Again, so just like Courtney was saying, we've actually dealt with that issue on another project here not too far away. And they will come in and do what they do. And it is about 60 to 70% of what needs to be done. Well, we want it to be right. So then what do? We go back and pay again to fix it like it needs to be because we want it to look nice in front of whatever our property is or whatever our project is. And so, you have the right of way that's up front, but part of the issue is the connectivity from the development all the way up to 112 and where that sidewalk would be. So if the elevations of 112 change, that means the elevations of all of our sidewalks that we've poured back into the development also have to get ripped out and redone. And they're not in the right of way. So the highway department is not even going to like make an attempt to do anything with that. So then you're just like, I'm talking like it is tens of thousands of dollars that is what impacts this. Now, I will tell you, if someone came into the north of us and said, we're going to put in, I don't know what, like a strip center with some restaurants or whatever, well, it's in our interest to put the sidewalk in because guess what? Your residents are going to be happier if they can walk to dinner. So, in general, we are a huge fan of sidewalks and we put in a lot of them and we pay the money to do it. But it just seems wasteful with the potential move here in light of the fact that there is no connectivity to get anywhere else. If it was like there were already a bunch of things there that would service the residents and they could walk, if we put this sidewalk in, they could walk up to restaurants or they could walk up to Casey's or they could drop their car off at the tire shop and then walk down. But us putting in the sidewalk doesn't solve that problem. They're still walking along 112 with no sidewalk for a significant stretch of time. So that's why we've said like our preference is if it goes to the north, then yes, we don't want to be the holdup ever. Like we want to help and make infrastructure and things work in Tawny Town. But it's kind of like if it was your front yard, like would you go build something in your front yard that the likelihood is it's going to get ripped down by things that are beyond your control?
Show me where, and I realize I interrupted, show me where a sidewalk, the internal system starts. Is that what that is?
Right here. And then on this side, here.
So, I mean, you're talking
It's
a
a
lot of
significant,
distance.
yeah.
To address your concerns again, so she stated in the beginning that we cannot take into account cost.
Right. While we can't take into account cost, what you can do is determine whether, as a board, you feel like this is a special circumstance because of the potential realignment of 112.
Yeah.
We know that 112 will be widened, and as Jason has pointed out, the elevations will change. So those are the things, like if you want to grant this waiver, those are things that you can quantify and say, these are special circumstances that do not apply to other properties. And this is why in this case, it's okay.
That is our thought, is not that if we were just, it was a normal circumstance and we thought, oh, concrete's expensive, like, I don't want to spend the extra
Right.
money. That's not the issue here. It is, you're going nowhere and it's probably going to get ripped out. So
Does the waiver as written, the waiver request as written, does it include future guarantee?
I think you could approve it with a recommendation that
As it's stated, it's to
the
the,
covenant is placed on this, that at such time that there is future connectivity, the sidewalk must be developed at that
south
point.
or north.
That is up to you. What the developer is asking for is just specifically north, but yes.
I mean, we're open. We want to be a good neighbor. We
And-
want to make it functional.
We like you being good neighbors.
Yes, and
What'd you say? We want
We like you being good neighbors too. We like you in Tawnytown.
yes.
being here.
And you guys know, I mean, I will say this, there's that added layer of that these are local people. So,
So anyway, and I don't know if it was clear. There was something y'all said a minute ago that you were at where it says lift station, playground, and dog park. I don't know if you could tell, like, so on the drawing, those are color coded, the words. So that's
Oh,
where
yeah.
those boxes
I'm
are.
sorry.
They're back away from the street.
yes,
That's where
they're
those items are.
they're here. I'm sorry. There wasn't enough
You see,
room to fit them
I
all.
was
So,
wondering,
that's what I
put that there,
No.
how you gonna build on that later?
no.
So that's just.
This
where
is the
those-
dog park. This is the lift station. This is the playground. My apologies for the unclear slide. There's
I was thinking, ooh, that they were located out close to the road.
no, there is nothing in this area.
I see them now, and thank you for,
Sorry.
That is why, honestly, we pulled the whole development off 112 because we just feel like it's wasteful to like push anything and dump money up there near the highway. I mean, it's just not,
Well,
it's not logical.
it just, yeah,
I understand completely.
yeah.
I'm also looking at future development,
Sure.
you know, need of sidewalks, need of walkways, need of, you know, bikeways, the whole 9 yards.
How much acreage in that frontage?
That's gotta be quite a bit there.
Just,
I think it's close to 5 or 6
Yeah. I think
acres
that's-
in the front.
Large
so that
Yeah.
won't,
Got this. Sorry, I just had to tell.
that won't
Yeah.
remain undone.
Two, I think that's pretty important that like, no one's gonna come fix that when the highway department does their thing.
Right.
Besides that.
So if we were to want to add conditions or stricter conditions,
Mhm.
how do we go about that at this point?
You can say that you recommend to approve the waiver with conditions that covenants are placed on the property so that when future connectivity is established, then the sidewalk waiver is revoked and they must construct the sidewalks and all connectivity to the interior sidewalk system. I'll have to go back later on YouTube and listen to all of that.
I'm going to make one clarifying statement
Yes.
to the conditions. It all depends on what goes south. Because if there are commercial developments and things that they would want their people to walk to the south, not just to the north. So we could say that when it's appropriate to the north or south.
Yes. We could do that.
Okay, not and, but or, depending on what goes in, you know, that. So having heard all of that discussion and participated in it,
I guess one more comment that I
Okay.
just thought, the highway going through is really the big unknown. Could we say when the highway improvement is done, that a sidewalk be installed?
or Yeah, well, I think highway should certainly be part of the criteria.
Yeah, I think that can be an and or type situation. Whether the future connectivity happens north or south, becomes appropriate, or the highway finalizes there.
We still would have the connectivity issue, even if the highway were in.
I mean, I think if the highway was built today to 5 lanes and it didn't have a sidewalk on it, we would feel comfortable putting the sidewalk there just because we knew the road was set at that point.
Correct.
So I think we can add that into a
So I'm
condition.
going to call for a motion. I would entertain a motion. Whoever wants to.
I'll move to approve waiver with conditions of if development happens to the north or to the south or to Highway 112, that all required sidewalks and enhancements must be done at that period.
We have a motion.
I will second.
Roll call.
Kevin,
Yes.
Rocky,
Yes.
Michael, yes.
Thank y'all.
Thank you. It's a lot, but it's important. So thank you guys for having that conversation with us.
Overtime pay is going to be big this month.
And that will be done in like a covenant type.
Absolutely. Yes, we have an example of a similar one that, again, Path Utilities.
Hey,
So-
don't hang out and watch us. Y'all can leave.
Thanks.
Y'all have a blessed evening. Thank you.
Thanks for building in Tawny Town.
Absolutely. Item 7D.
Yes. So this is accessory dwellings. I went over this pretty thoroughly in the public hearing because I wanted to make sure there wasn't anybody who had to leave. So I will not go back over it unless you have specific questions about this. Staff is recommending that you approve this and move it to the city council for ratification. If
Move
there
to
are,
approve
okay.
7D and pass it on to the city council.
And I second.
Roll call.
Kevin,
Yes.
Rocky,
Yes.
Michael, yes.
Thank you. And I'm sorry you had to wait so long to hear that. And you too can go enjoy a cup of tea or whatever you do at this normal time of night. All right, so 7D has been passed and will be moved forward. 7E, updates to tow yards, chapter 153.021.
Yes. Again, I went over this one really thoroughly at the public hearing. If there are any additional questions or changes, I will say that I got some comments from Michael that we might want to just kind of talk about. I hit on them a little bit in the public hearing. So he had a question about inoperable or operable. The reason that operable vehicles can go in is because these do get on like tow rotations with police departments, so they can tow DWIs or no parkings or stuff like that. There's a clarification that he'd like to make it wrecked automobiles or wrecked vehicles, so that we can change it to like motor vehicles, so that we make sure that we're not just saying cars, but we're talking about motorcycles, large trucks. Just a clarification to make sure the language is not excluding anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then 90 days. How do you guys feel about that? So what the process is the state says that they have 45 days. And in 45 days, if you don't claim your car, that car becomes the property of the tow yard to auction off. They can't keep it, but they auction it. And so what apparently a lot of tow places do is hold them for a little while until they have a few to auction, and then they auction them off.
Give them a grace period too.
They give them a grace. Yeah, a grace period. So that's the reason the 90 days came about, but it's certainly up for debate and or discussion. Additionally, Michael mentioned visual barriers. And so that's why I was trying to explain that with a conditional use permit. At that time, we look at compatibility. And we have the authority to add beautification and buffering and fencing to this type of development.
Depending on location.
Where appropriate. Absolutely. And then fluid leakage containment plan. It's not into the sewer system. It is, in most cases, these are gravel lots. You know, we have the requirement to pave 100 feet back off the road, and I'm not recommending that we change that. It's not perfect, but gravel lots do filter more so than paved lots do, because it gives it time to go through the groundwater. I asked about doing a secondary containment, and basically the tow people laughed and said, you know, how impossible that would be. And I just don't think there's a good answer for secondary containment. If we tried to add it, truly to pave it and to collect all of it, it would put people, they could.
About size limitations so that we don't have huge spaces.
That's certainly something we could restrict. Do you have an idea? What we were trying to do is there's a gentleman who is interested in getting on the Tawnytown police rotation, but does not have a yard in Tawnytown. And
Tow yard has to be, to service a police department, has to be in the same city.
it doesn't. It's a preference, and it cuts down on their cost so that he's not having to haul his tows all the way back across Springdale.
Yeah.
He can keep them here and do more for the city at a cheaper rate. And I think that helps.
And these
you know.
yards, whatever type, would have to be in C2.
In C2 as a conditional use permit, or in industrial as just permitted,
Okay.
not in C1 at all. That's definitely not appropriate.
So C2 is a condition.
Conditional use permit only.
We don't have size limitations or anything like that, or restrictions on any other business.
No.
I was just thinking out loud
I
while
know.
ago.
Yeah, I know. There's a lot of moving parts on some of these.
Okay, move to the staff recommendation.
Staff is recommending that you
Oh, right, this is,
to
right.
forward these changes to the city council with a recommendation to ratify it,
Michael, any other questions or follow up on your list?
or any adjustments before we send it to the city council. Did you guys want to change the 90 days or?
90 seems reasonable. It seems longer than, 3 months, but at the same time, you can't generate immediate business on the same day that it becomes your property.
Right.
How's that,
45 is the state. Go ahead.
how's it managed to make sure it hasn't become a salvage piece? How's that?
Right. So, that takes staff eyes and takes complaint-based stuff. If they're behind a big fence and there's a wrecked vehicle, I'm probably not ever going to see it. Neither is their neighbor. But, obviously the reason that these are different from salvage yards, is because there's a certain nuisance attached to salvage yards. Rats, mice, mosquitoes, things where there's junk sitting for a long time. So these don't typically have, these are a lot cleaner type business, just because of the nature of what they are. So I think if somebody noticed that there was suddenly a bunch of vermin, I would get a phone call and then we would go and check it out. And we do have the authority to go and say, okay, I need to see your records. When did all these cars get here on the lot? And then at that point, if they were out of compliance, we could revoke business licenses or whatever needed to happen at that time.
What department manages that?
Code enforcement and planning.
Got it. Any other questions? I would entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Kevin,
Yes.
Rocky,
Yes.
Michael, yes.
Thank you. So that completes item 7 regarding new business. Just to acknowledge the accessory dwellings and the tow yard updates will be forwarded to city council.
Yes, CUPs conditional use permits don't have to go to city council for ratification. They do have to
Correct.
have a public hearing, but they don't have to go to city council.
And then reoccurring items. Item 9. Hi, Roger.
Hi. South Point subdivision phase 1, final approval granted 10/11/2018. There are several houses being built in there right now.
And they did finally get their lift station going. Yay!
Yes. South Point subdivision phase 2 in construction. Venetia Piazza in construction, C of O issued for building 2, suites 8 and 9. COO issued for building 3, no additional until LSD is completed. I did do a final on building 5, suite 1.
Okay.
But
And I do
there's no
expect,
C of O on there.
I do expect to grant their final large scale tomorrow morning. I think I have all of the pieces of the puzzle that we needed, and they have bonded some landscaping and some awnings that they did not have in place. They dropped off a cashier's check this afternoon to hold as a cash bond until such time that they get those done. So we feel like they're going to wrap it up, and we can start issuing all the CFOs, and hopefully those will fill up fast.
Napa subdivision, final approved, granted 1/29/19, waiting on Cox Communications to move the poles so road work can be completed on Artemani and Baker. Cross Point Church, LSD in construction. I got a call from them
Good,
today that they're close to wanting the final,
good.
so
Are they going to change the green to brown?
I'm not sure about that.
Just curious.
I don't know either.
Something we can.
Oh, I know. I was just asking if we heard what their plan was.
Hey, Raj, if you set it up, remind them that I need to do a final large scale inspection as well.
Okay. Path Utilities, building permit issued in construction. Ozark Self-Storage, extension granted 11/27/18. Plaza Tire in construction. I have to do a sewer inspection for them tomorrow.
Good.
MH Backhoe Commercial, extension granted 1/22/19. Waste Management, CNG Prelim LSD in construction. Boulder Coffee, plans approved. Paramount Metals, building permit issued in construction. Okay, on our residential valuation, we've got a variance of 4,175,675.91. Single family permits, a variance of 16. Commercial valuation, we're 4,216,795.73 less at the present time. Residential permit fees, the variance of 16,961.29. Commercial permit fees, we're down $18,310.17. Other permits, variance 2,463.83. Total fees assessed, variance of $33,092.62.
And I did some quick check-in right before the meeting. In January, we issued 28 building permits. In February, we've only issued 12, but I do have 2 more sitting on my desk waiting for me to finish them. We are currently at 40 permits. We did not hit 40 permits in 2018 until the end of March. So while February was a bit slower, it's not going in.
Still way ahead.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so we are now on comments. Thank you, Roger. $10A.
Yes. Okay. So, the 2018 year in review, because Rocky said that he can't remember what we did.
I did not say that.
So I thought I'd give you a little update. It's on page 82 of your packet. We had 21 total meetings in 2018. I think that's a record. I mean, that's pretty good. We had 6 subcommittee meetings, including a tour of the landfill. We had 2 special meetings, which meant that we were trying to help developers out by getting them their finals passed so they could start building. We had 1 full-on public input session, if everybody remembers how fun that was. That was really hands-on and interactive, and I think we had a really good time showing the community what we'd done. And we had 12 regular meetings. We approved 37 administrative projects that Daryl came in and signed. That's smaller lot splits with 5 lots or less, those kind of things that don't need full board review, but Daryl came by and saw me 37 times. We reviewed
Did it once.
yeah, that's true. We reviewed 28 projects through the board. Those includes everything from waivers to rezonings to variances to subdivisions. We approved 294 residential subdivision lots. Preliminary, we were 65 of them, which was Napa subdivision, which we know just now got approval for final. But we finaled out 229 residential subdivision lots last year. Ordinances that we revised included that sign ordinance that took months of subcommittee meetings and tackling, and we came up with that. We redid some fee structuring. We redid some stuff on our maintenance guarantees. And of course, we passed our future land use and master transportation plan, which was the highlight, I think, of 2018. And that went to the city council and was approved and is now part of our plan. So that is our year in review.
Have you presented this to staff or to the,
I made this today.
and whoever,
Procrastinator.
and whoever is attending the next COW,
Yes,
this should review this.
they should.
So
It will be in my synopsis.
it's often, okay, thank you.
We can certainly toot our own horn a little.
Absolutely.
I think-
Well, I
We ought
know
to come as a group.
at the last COW, I know that the police department often gives an annual
They do.
review, and so
And is there anything else that you want me to include on those stats? I've got the data for all sorts of things. I just pulled out the ones that I thought were,
how many jokes Rocky told?
oh man,
No.
I didn't keep track of that. But I can go back and listen to all the recordings.
don't.
No?
Okay.
And then I threw in here the 2018 year end, just in case you wanted to look at that again to see. Are we done?
That's excellent.
Okay, we do have to do officer elections tonight.
That is tonight.
So right now I have Daryl Watts as chairman, Rocky Clinton as vice chairman, Michael Lunsford as secretary, who may decide he doesn't want that job after tonight, Kevin Bortz as a member, and Larry Roberts as a member.
You might decide you don't want me for that.
Oh, no.
My motion, they all stay the same.
Oh, yeah?
Second
We have
that.
a-
All
we have a
right.
Motion. Did you second it, Michael?
I did.
Oh.
Yes.
I'm willing. Are you willing?
Everybody accept their nominations?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Do we need a vote? Do we, for the record, or do we just acknowledge an affirmation?
I'm recording it on a,
Yeah, we could do a voice vote just to,
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All
okay.
opposed by the same sign. You have to give the opposition the opportunity.
Some upcoming meetings. I do want to talk to you guys about the last page in your packet. This is the Growing Communities Conference, and I have been involved on the steering committee for this conference. I am really excited. This is the very first conference that we have had that is geared towards smaller cities. Okay, Fayetteville and Springdale are welcome to come, but really this is geared towards smaller Northwest Arkansas cities. We have big problems, but we don't have the same financial resources that the big cities do to tackle the same problems that they do. So we are going to hear from some very smart people who can come and talk to us about how to get grants, how to structure growth and management in our cities, and just ideas for how to grow our cities. How do we build chambers of commerce? How do we do this kind of thing? The registration fee is $40, and I'm working with Paul to see if I can get him to pay for y'all if you want to go. It is one day on a Wednesday, March 13th, just right down the road on at the Tyson Center for Ag Sciences, right off of 112. And I think it would be fantastic if at least one or all 5 of you were able to attend. And like I said, I'm working on the mayor to see if we can get all of those entries covered. If you're available and are interested, please let me know and I will get with him some more. I plan to attend and I've got Paul signed up, so we're going. But Daryl, Rocky,
I
maybe.
cannot.
No, that's okay.
I expect a full report.
Oh, I hope that it's, I really think it's
Dope.
amazing. Some of these people, like Dr. Mark Peterson, he does an individual class like this and he's really fantastic. So,
I didn't finish.
what do you think,
Expect
Kevin?
a full
I'd love
report
to.
from the chairman.
Kevin, yes?
Yes, I believe I'm in.
Awesome. Michael, I know Wednesdays are not the best for you, but
I would attempt to go if.
okay, you want me to find out more from Paul?
Well, I suppose y'all have to pay ahead.
We do. I have to
Yeah.
register you and pay ahead if you can't, it's okay. I'm just saying, I think it's,
Can you repeat the title of the?
yes, it's called the Northwest Arkansas Growing Communities Conference.
It's a all day or
It is. It's a 9 to 4:30 kind of thing. I think you get lunch.
when's the deadline to register?
That is a very good question that I don't know the answer to, but I will find out.
How about if I decide to go, I'll pay my own.
Okay.
I'll register at the door.
Okay, that sounds good. I will find out for you for sure on that. But I think it's going to be a really good conference, and hopefully it gives us some ideas. I have personally heard what Siloam Springs has done, and even some things that Huntsville has done to get interest into their local businesses. And I just think they're fantastic. And I would love if we could take some of those ideas and make them work for Tawnytown to just grow our community and make it a better place for everybody. So, other meetings, as always, City Council is March 5th. Committee of the Whole is March 19th.
I think we
And-
changed that to the 12th.
Oh, they did.
Committee of the whole.
No, the Committee of the Whole was changed to March 12th
Spring break.
due to spring break. And then, good, thank you for remembering that. And then the March Planning Board meeting is March 26th.
Item 11, any comments from board members?
Yes, I would like to go on record. First of all, I would like to congratulate the board for their many accomplishments in 2018. I think that we did a tremendous job getting a lot of things done for a town of 3,000 people. And I would also like to add on the record that we couldn't have done it without Courtney. You were a very valuable addition to the staff, and we appreciate you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I second that.
Any other comments? Entertain a motion to adjourn.
A motion to
All in
adjourn.
favor, say aye. Good night.